Hey, my name is Jonathan McLernan. I'm actually an online nutrition coach as well as a mentor to new coaches building their online business. And I thought I would try out being a guest on other people's podcasts to see how that might help me grow my own business and see if I could, get in front of other audiences, grow my own audience that way, kind of multiply my efforts rather than just trying to grow, organically one person at a time on various social platforms. And so I've actually tried out 4 different podcast guest matching platforms. And I tried them out for 6 months, and I've kept a very extensive spreadsheet of all of the data to see not just how effective each platform was, but what I was spending and maybe even a little bit of ROI from that. I'm just going to give you kind of the high level details, and then I'm going to give you a breakdown of each of the 4 major platforms that I've been on, what their pros and cons are, and why ultimately I've made my final decision for the platform I'm going to continue to stay with moving forward. So let's dive in.
All right, so to dive in here, I'm going to just give you a quick overview of my spreadsheet. Don't be intimidated by all the numbers, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details. Just know that obviously I know my way around spreadsheets, and I'm a big fan of data, so I've collected quite a bit. But I'm going to try and give you the summary and then show you each platform and the data that's relevant to that platform. So to start out with, over the time that I've been doing podcast guesting, I've sent 275 pitches. I've had 136 appearances. So that's actually about a 50%, it would seem like a 50% success rate, but you'll notice that my PSR, or pitch success rate average, is 25%. Now that's because when I'm counting the pitch success rate, I don't factor in the number of inbound requests. So that's where somebody reaches out to me and asks me to be a guest on their show. What I wanted to know is, because I wanted to determine if it was worth my time to pitch podcasts to be a guest on the show, or if it's better for me to just sit around and wait for the guest requests to come in, depending on which platform I was on. And a pitch success rate of 25% is actually pretty good. I've heard numbers between 15 and 20% is average. So between 1 in 6, 1 in 5 shows that you pitch, you might actually successfully be a guest on. And so I calculated the total number that I've spent. That's with like membership fees, like monthly membership fees to be on these platforms. This is calculated in Canadian dollars. So 1,500 Canadian dollars, maybe that's 1,300 US dollars. And then of that, how much has it cost me to appear, like per episode or per podcast appearance? So it's a little over $11 per appearance on average, or maybe like $9 American, give or take, 9 US dollars. So the 4 platforms that I'm comparing are Podcast Guests, PODMATCH, PODBOOKER, MATCHMAKER, and this 5th column here is just invitations that I've received, basically. And obviously there's no cost associated with that. So with Podcast Guests, I've had 28 interviews and spent $726 basically, almost $26 Canadian per interview. So you can see that that's a pretty high number. And I will, when I show you the Podcast Guests platform, I'll show you why that is. Not to discourage you from necessarily using it, because it is actually a pretty cool platform, but the cost per interview was higher for me. PODMATCH, 62 interviews. So the majority of my interviews have come from PODMATCH. Spent a little over $400, so about $6.50 per interview. So significantly better, more than twice as many interviews. A little over half the amount spent, meaning that it's about a quarter of the cost per appearance. PODBOOKER, I've only booked 18 interviews, and this is the money that I spent, and almost $14 per interview using PODBOOKER. And then Matchmaker, I've done 12 appearances, spending about $150. As you notice, I actually have a note there. I gave a $20 donation to Chat and Spin Radio. That was one of the appearances I was on. So really, that number would be smaller if I didn't give someone a donation. At the time that I booked it, it was $99 US for a year. That might have changed by now. It might have gone up a little bit, but looking at about $12 an appearance, right? So with Podcast Guests, I expect this number is going to come down a little bit because there's still, but at the time of recording, there's still a number of months left in the year. And so I have no further dollar spend on this platform until the time of renewal, if I choose to renew. And so this number will come down as the time goes on. And so I'm going to chat a little bit about each of the 4 platforms here, their strengths and their weaknesses, pros and cons. And so I'll give you the data on the platform, and then I'm going to walk you over to that platform and just give you an overview of that platform, and I'll refer back to this spreadsheet here as well. So podcast guests, that's the first one I'm going to show you. And I'm showing this one first because this was the first platform I was on. I just happened to see a Facebook ad that sparked the idea of being a guest on podcasts. I would have had no idea how to do this otherwise. And so I'd sent about 63 pitches and only booked 5 appearances on the pitches that I'd sent. So that's less than 8% pitch success rate. So I actually stopped sending pitches in the way that podcast guests would have you do it, because it really, as you can see, like the return on investment just in terms of time spent doing pitches really wasn't worth it. It was a very low number, and I'm going to explain why that is. But the real strength of this platform, the flip side, is the number of inbound requests that you get, and I'll show you why that is as well. So over 80% of my guest spots booked through podcast guests has been via inbound requests. That's somebody reaching out to me and asking if I would be a guest on their platform, which is really cool. So I'm going to flip over to podcast guests. I'm going to show you a little bit of a walkthrough of their platform, show you what it looks like to book a show or pitch a show, I should say, pitch a show on their platform, what their twice weekly newsletter looks like, and what a platinum feature looks like, and what were the results of that money spent. So let's head over there now. So we're looking at podcastguest.com, and this is, I'm going to put the affiliate link that I have for Podcast Guest. Obviously, it doesn't change the price you pay, but it means if you do choose to sign up for this platform, I get a little bit of an affiliate commission, which is kind of nice. And so the basic plan here is $10 a month if you pay annually, so $120, or $15 if you pay month by month. My recommendation would be to start out with just a month by month membership to decide whether or not you like that platform before committing to a full year. Now, I did pay for a full year after a couple of months because I was satisfied with the results I was getting. Now, the premium, which I paid for premium as well. So premium gives you a number of additional benefits. It means you're more likely to get booked as a guest. So they charge $29 a month. What's that, like $350 for the year? And this is US dollars, by the way. $350 for the year, or month by month if you pay $39 a month. So that's their basic and their premium plans. I'm on the premium plan currently for a few months yet. So I'm going to take you over to the dashboard. So once you have your account created, this is what the back end looks like. So you can edit your profile. I'll show you what my profile looks like so you get a kind of glimpse at that. Subscription options, I've kind of touched on those. Platinum featured guest, I'll show you what that looks like as well. And then the affiliate programs. They have quite a generous affiliate program. They're paying a 25% commission. So if you sign up, I get a 25% commission, full disclosure. So, if you were paying, say $39 a month for premium membership, I get 25% of that, which is really generous. And it's a great platform. And that's why I'm going to include my affiliate link down there. Okay, so profile. Here's what your profile will look like. So you got a profile picture at the top, some social links at the top, a quick summary, a big orange invite this expert to be a guest on your podcast, and then a little bit of details. And so I tried to break it down using a little bit of text and heading and to make it a little bit more readable. But anyways, so the backstory, the nutrition coaching, here's what I do there. Business mentorship, there's what I do there. Here's the courses that I have and some extra backstory myself, topics I can discuss. So one of the things is, it's a little bit difficult to sort of make this look a little smoother. But anyways, I did the best that I could with regards to that because there's 3 different categories that I'm available to be invited to be a guest on, for example. So I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but you can list, here's all the, maybe podcasts you've been on, how you're going to promote it. Here's a podcast pitch video, a guest pitch video, so people can see you, hear you talking, see your setup, that kind of thing. And then some website links down below. And that's kind of the extent of your profile. So now if somebody wants to invite you to be a guest, they might find you in the directory. So I'll just give you a quick glimpse. Here's what the directory looks like. And if you pay for a premium feature, you're likely going to get featured near the top of this directory. For some reason, this directory isn't is not showing, but that's cool. Anyways, you'll see, and you can pick all these different categories. So let's see if I pick health and fitness. Okay, there we go. So those who pay to be a premium, they're going to be featured near the top. So if I was looking for a guest in the health and fitness category, I could click that, and here's the top there. If Funny, I don't see myself near the top of the list currently, but that's okay. They rotate this. They don't, and so you'll get an appearance there at some point in time, and that will likely trigger getting invited to be on a few podcasts. Okay. So now their strength is, or what they do is they send out a twice weekly email newsletter. In that newsletter, they'll have the platinum feature if anyone has paid to be a platinum feature for that week, and then they're going to show you 10 guests who are looking to be invited onto a podcast, and then they're going to show you 10 podcasts who are looking for guests. And this newsletter goes out to, at the time of recording this, more than 30,000 people. So let's have a look at what that newsletter looks like. So it's going to come from Andrew, and it's going to say podcast guests needing, or podcasts needing guests. There we go. I'm saying the word guest a lot. There's a lot of S's. Anyways, so you can see this is the time that I paid for that premium feature. So you're going to be showed right at the top of this newsletter, again, going out to over 30,000 people, featured expert. Here's, in bold, your backstory and a little extra detail around that, and suggested interview questions and so on. And then after that, they're going to show you what it looks like as a standard. And you'll get rotated. If you're a premium member, you get rotated through. So you might make an appearance every 4 or 6 months on their newsletter. And so here I am down here. Yeah, there we go. So even when you pay for a platinum feature, you're also still listed below in the newsletter. And in terms of guest invites, so when I was featured in the newsletter, the standard newsletter feature, I would usually see about 3 to 4 guest invites each time I've been featured. Whereas when I did the platinum feature, I had 6 guest requests coming in. Now, keeping in mind that I paid $225 US for this platinum feature, I didn't really know what to expect from it. I didn't know how many guest requests I might see. I only saw 6, and when you divide that, that's a pretty expensive, high cost per guest invite. So I'm not sure that platinum feature is really truly worth it, given some of the other options that are out there. But as I mentioned, the real strength of this platform is the number of inbound invites that you get without you having to really put very much effort in. So now let's say that I wanted to get booked on a podcast here. Let's see if I can find one that might be a good fit. The philosophy of fighting, probably not. Financial flossing, out of the box with Christine. Okay, let's just say I wanted to get featured on this podcast here. So I'm going to click this link here. Click here and submit yourself if qualified. What's that going to bring me to? It's going to bring me to a Google Sheet, and then you're going to fill it in here. You're going to fill in the details, guest name, email address, why you'd be relevant to be on that podcast, what's the name of the podcast, if you have your own, how are you going to promote it, and then what's the URL of your guest expert profile. So the other thing is, to fill this form in, if you do this a lot, it can become kind of time consuming. And so if we go back to the data here, you can see of those 63 pitches, every time I sent that pitch, I had to fill in that form and then only see this very low return on the time that I was spending trying to book my guest spots on these podcasts. Now you can see why this probably would happen, and that's because when they send out their newsletter, it's going to say 30,000 people. So if your podcast was the one that was featured in one of those weekly newsletters, you could see 200 or 300 guest requests come flooding in. Well, that will take you quite a bit of time to process it, and most people aren't going to do much of that. They're just going to filter most of them out. And so that's why I believe they have such a low pitch success rate. But the flip side of it is getting featured in, getting that newsletter feature, even if it's not a platinum feature, getting featured in the newsletter will get you, at least 4 invites coming in. And so I think that's, see, there's my invite again. My feature again. That's where the real strength of this platform lies, is that you can be fairly passive on this platform as a podcast guest and see anywhere from 2 to 3 invites coming in every single month just by being a part of this directory here. So that's PODCASTGUESTS.com. Now I'm going to take you over to, I'm actually going to skip over PodMatch. I'm going to come back to them for a reason. I'm going to take you over to PodBooker here. So with PodBooker, you can see that I'd sent 24 pitches and booked 14 shows. So almost 60% pitch success rate, very high. And then 4 inbound requests, which isn't too bad overall. So a quarter of my requests are coming inbound, meaning, again, I didn't have to request it or pitch anything for that request to come in. So I didn't put my show profile on PodBooker, even though I do have my own podcast, because I don't want guest requests coming in from this platform. I do all of my guest booking through PodMatch, and I'll explain that why when I talk about PodMatch. So we'll show you, first of all, what does the profile look like? I really like the profile. Great picture. Here's the tags, social links, sample interviews so people can see that. One of the features I love about PodBooker is the ask for a review. So if I was a guest on a podcast, I could search that podcast, let's say my podcast is called Between the Before and... Oh, there we go. So I could request a review from this, and they'll just get a little email that says, hey, Jonathan McLernon has requested a review. I love that feature because underneath these sample interviews comes the host reviews. And you can see that I have a number of reviews, 46 reviews, which is really, really fantastic. I'm not sure if people are actually going to bother reading all of the reviews. I have one 4-star review, and I think every other one's been 5 stars. So you can see there's quite a few reviews here. And the reason I have so many is because I've asked people for these reviews, which is fantastic. Again, it's pretty easy to lay out your profile on here. So I lay out the nutrition coaching, the business mentorship, and then a little bit of extra backstory. If people want to book a call, here's my talking points. I really love this, actually. It's just a personal preference, but I love that they show you the podcast art for all these different podcasts that I've been featured on. And not all of these were booked through PodBooker, but anytime I did a podcast guest appearance, I logged on PodBooker as well. Maybe it's for my own ego or something like that, but it is cool in my estimation to see like all the different podcasts that I've been a part of, and it shows anybody who might be looking that I'm quite an experienced guest as well. And right near the bottom, you can feature any of your own stuff, whether media and press, books and awards and things like that. And that'll improve your ability to get booked. So to get booked on a show, you're going to just navigate over to Find Podcasts. And the first list that's going to come up is just going to be kind of random podcasts. There's no rhyme or reason. You're going to want to go over to categories and then select, whatever categories you think are relevant. So I could say maybe health and fitness, self-improvement, alternative health, for example. Those are the ones maybe that are like a good fit for what I do. So I click apply, and it's going to show me more relevant podcasts. But still, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go through and sift through, check each one of these out and say, is it really a good fit or not? And then from there, I would send a pitch. So let's just say I found one that I thought was maybe a good fit here. So now tell us. Okay, do you have a compelling story that can inspire or educate? I do, actually. So if I decide that I want to pitch this show, this little blue pitch host button there, click that. It's going to say write a personal message here. And when you write a pitch, keep it short. Here's why I like your show. Here's why it'd be a good fit. Here's how it'd be valuable for your audience. That kind of thing. And you can see based on the current plan I'm on, I have 10 pitches remaining, so I can send 10 pitches per month. And then if I click send request, that's going to send them a message. So let's swing over to the messages section here. So in the messages section here, I'm just showing you actually an inbound request that I got from a show called St. Clair Speaks. Really great show. Yahave is a great guy. It was nice to be a guest on his show. And just a really simple message. I'd love to have you as a guest. It gives me the option to view the profile, view scheduling details, quick message back and forth. We set up the schedule and I'm on the show. The only drawback really in the messaging section of it is it doesn't distinguish between whether it was someone requesting to be on my show or whether it was a show that I was requesting to be a part of. All the messages are kind of lumped together, and so it can be a little bit clunky to navigate, but by and large, it's pretty smooth to get booked on a show here. So that's really how PodBooker works. As I said, the pitch success rate for PodBooker was quite high, 60%. They're, I think, 29 at the time of recording this, $29 US per month for the premium. I think they have a $19 per month feature as well. Yeah, so you can see their Plus plan is $19.99 per month. That allows you 10 pitches per month. Their Pro plan, $29.99 per month. That allows you 30 pitches plus a featured profile badge and the best search ranking. So obviously you're going to see better results if you choose the Pro plan versus the Plus plan. And so you would look at the numbers in terms of pitch success rate with PodBooker and see that it's 60%. It's the highest by a long shot It's basically double any other one. Why am I not spending more time on this platform? And there's a couple of reasons. One, I have a high pitch success rate because I spent so much time looking for the right shows. So you'll find that the filters are relatively limited when it comes to trying to determine the type of show you're looking for. And then you don't get a lot of information. So if you pick a show, you don't necessarily get a lot of information about the show in terms of maybe its audience size, downloads per episodes, reach, all that kind of stuff. So if you wanted to know more about that, you really have to go digging for it. And you'll see why, of course, down the road here, why I'm highlighting that sort of thing. So in a nutshell, what we have here is a really great starter platform. If you're new to podcast guesting, this is a little bit more budget friendly. It's pretty easy to navigate. You're going to get on some shows. It's attractive in terms of its profile. It's got good pricing, but as time goes on, I found that it was less efficient to be on this platform because in order to get the most out of my podcast guest appearances, I had to spend more time trying to find the gold in this. And so on top of that, having only 4 inbound requests over a 6-month span, that's quite low. And so I was going to be doing a lot of the legwork if I wanted any guest appearances, and I'd like to see that balanced out a little bit better. So I'm going to swing over to Matchmaker here and show you a little bit about Matchmaker. Actually, very quickly, I'll just show you. So, I mean, for others, there's a few that I've reached out and pitched, but a lot of inbound requests. So that's just what those numbers are if you're looking at that, wondering kind of about that. So for Matchmaker, my pitch success rate, again, not bad, 26%, which seems to be a little bit above the industry average, which is about 20%, and 6 inbound requests as well. So half of the shows I'm booking on Matchmaker coming in. Again, the cost will be a little bit inflated with Matchmaker because I paid the annual fee. And so as, I get booked on more shows, that cost per show is going to go down. So it's only showing you the average at the given time. And this blue-gray spreadsheet up here, I was trying to calculate projections roughly. So how many days I've been with the service, how many shows per year I might book, estimated shows per month, cost, and so on and so forth. I don't want to bore you with those numbers. The point being, again, Matchmaker, 1 in 4 pitches, getting me on a show with Matchmaker. You can go and have a look at my guest profile. I don't mind the layout of it. Again, profile picture, little headliner, some tags, the backstory. I'm also the host. Nutrition coaching, business mentorship. So same stuff you'll see on the other profiles. And I believe there's also a pitch video. Yeah, there we go. There's a pitch video there you can place. So you can see both Matchmaker and podcast guests offer you the pitch video. So if I want to send anything, I can go find a show. It's going to give me just give me some shows. If I decide that Independent Adventures, that sounds like a fun show or whatever, I can contact the show. So it gives me here's what their platform looks like, their profile looks like. I can contact the show, send them a message, which profile I'm going to contact them from a guest profile, and send them a message. And the cool thing with Matchmaker, so I get mostly requests to be a guest on my show. You can see here in the messages, if it shows the podcast show art, that means it's a request to be a guest on my show. If it shows my profile picture, it's a request for me to be a guest on their show. And it sorts between the two, actually, which is kind of handy. So this messaging part of it is really cool. One of the other neat things about this is they have a messenger app, and so you can manage your conversations from on your phone. So Matchmaker is a really strong player in this space. At $99 a year, as of the time of recording this, really, really great price. They don't offer a month-by-month option, so if you're going to go the pro option, you're going to have to pay for a year up front. But you're getting a really great price. As I mentioned earlier in the walkthrough, their messaging system is fantastic. And the fact they have an app is kind of cool. They also make podcast recommendations for you to save some of your search time. As a podcast host, I get a ton of inbound requests and a lot of irrelevant requests, just random people messaging me because they just want to be a guest on any podcast. And so I imagine if that's happening to me, it's probably happening to another number of other hosts as well. And so because of that, the response time can be, not even slow, it's completely ghosted. I think I've been ghosted more times on this platform than any other platform. And I think it's not because the hosts are trying to be a jerk. It's because they just get so many requests coming in, so many low quality guest requests coming in. And so that leads to a lower overall pitch success rate. And so I think Matchmaker has some good points to it. But again, ultimately, I found myself drifting away from it. And again, when I go to research shows that maybe I would like to be a guest on, there's only really limited data that I can maybe find about that. So let's say here, looking at like Business Bros, cool. I mean, it sounds like kind of a fun podcast. They tell you what they're up for, booking guests. They don't want to do any ad swaps or content collabs. But again, if I want to find anything out about the show, it's relatively limited in terms of what information I'm given here. So it's hard to know whether or not I'm getting on a high quality podcast. Now they are shown as a founding member, so maybe this is they could be a much bigger podcast than I have, for example. But again, it's hard to know that. And I'm going to end up doing a lot of legwork on this platform because the number of inbound requests is really low. It's been maybe one a month, if that. So that's kind of Matchmaker in a nutshell. And from here, I want to move on to PodMatch and show you why, now that you've seen these other platforms, that I think PodMatch is the strongest contender in all of these platforms if you're serious about getting an ROI from your podcast guesting experience. So we're going to swing back over to PodMatch. And this one is my favorite platform. And it's become clear, like I'm spending more and more of my time on PodMatch versus any of these other platforms because it works so well and so effectively. Now, again, pitch success rate, 28%, which is above average, 17 inbound requests. So it's really very close to podcast guests. And I've actually been on PodMatch for a shorter window of time than podcast guests. So to see that number of inbound requests is actually pretty cool. So what we're looking at here is my PodMatch dashboard inside of my PodMatch account. I've blurred over some things just for the sake of privacy, and it might look a little bit intimidating at first because if you haven't seen something like this before, but I promise you, once I break it down and explain the different elements to you, you're going to see why I believe PodMatch to be a head and shoulders above every other platform trying to help you become a guest on other podcasts. And so it's not that these other platforms aren't really solid options. It's that PodMatch does everything they do and more, and they've done it in a better, a more time efficient way. And that's why PodMatch is such a powerful system. Ultimately, we have a couple of objectives here. One is to get booked on podcasts, and two, I would say I want to get booked on podcasts as efficiently as possible so I don't spend hours and hours of my time doing this. And then three, I want to be able to see what is the measurable impact of my podcast guest appearances. Am I actually generating some kind of ROI or return on investment? And so let me break that down a little bit for you. Right at the top, the first thing that you can see here is my estimated reach from podcast guesting. So my estimated reach from the number of podcasts I have been a guest on, over almost 70,000 listens and almost 1.2 million social impressions. That's incredibly impressive. So there's no guessing in a sense. Yes, it's an estimate, but now I have something that's measurable as opposed to, I hope this is working. And so I think that's really awesome that you get to see that right at the top. Over on the left, you're going to see the to-do list. And for me, it's actually just a number of guests that are coming on one of my shows that I'm having to make sure that we organize dates and time. So it just lets you know if there's anything that hasn't been done yet, and it keeps it in kind of a neat and tidy fashion and shows you what's kind of the highest priority there. PodMatch, because I have a dual account, a guest and a host account, it allows me to decide what kind of matches I want to prioritize. And because I get a lot of inbound requests to be a guest on my show, I prioritize matching me with podcast hosts. So I don't really have to look for guests on this platform because I have so many guest requests coming in for my show. And so I can toggle this, but I can choose to be prioritizing my matches for podcast hosts. Underneath that, you have a quick snapshot of how many unscheduled interviews I have coming up. Most of those, again, are going to be on my actual show, how many upcoming interviews I have, and how many completed interviews I've done. On the administration side, it lets you know how many reviews, what my average response time is, and unpaid commission, which is one of the neat features of PodMatch. As a podcast host, I actually earn a commission because Podcast does revenue sharing. So obviously there's a membership fee to be on this platform. Well, PodMatch takes that revenue and shares it with podcast hosts to help them cover the cost of being on the platform. And so from the perspective of a guest, it makes me as a premium member a more attractive guest because a podcast host is going to earn a few bucks for having me on their show. Next up, it's going to show me what my upcoming interviews are. It doesn't distinguish between guest and host interviews, but it's just going to show me in chronological order what I have coming up on my calendar. So again, helping me to keep everything really organized here. And then over on the right-hand side, you can see the April member leaderboard. So as at the time of recording, this is April 2022, and my current global rank is number 10. When we look at another part of the platform, I'm going to show you why this is relevant. And in my case, it's actually for my show between the before and after. You can see I'm the 10th ranked show on the platform here, which gets me a little bit more exposure as a show as well. But PodMatch rewards your activity on the platform. And I think that's also really valuable because I haven't seen this in other platforms where, getting reviews, booking shows, and things like that elevate your status on the platform. But PodMatch rewards you for the efforts you put into being on the platform. This is one of the reasons, I could be wrong on this, but this is one of the reasons that I believe I see so many inbound guest requests. So people asking me to be a guest on their show is because of my activity on this platform, and because that activity is rewarded, it allows me to rank a little bit higher in terms of the overall leaderboard. So I think that's a really, really fantastic feature that they have. Right here at the bottom, they're going to show you, here's when we estimate your episodes are going to be released, so that I'm aware of when either I'm releasing an episode or an episode that I was a guest on is going to be released. And that's super helpful as well. And then over on the right-hand side again, they have the PodMatch education checklist. This again, because PodMatch can look like or seem like, because it's a very robust platform, it can feel like there's a lot. And so they give you a very easy, short, 1 to 5 minute videos just showing you exactly how to get the most out of this platform. And Alex, the founder, does a great job of educating you on how to use this platform to its maximum potential. So the next thing I'm going to show you here is my guest profile on this platform, and I'll show you that and then show you why it's relevant when it comes to PodMatch's algorithm in terms of AI matching you with the best shows that would be a fit for you as a guest. So it's fairly easy to navigate. I click this little icon up here. I can go from dashboard to view, edit, guest profile. It takes me over to my profile. Again, I've got a pitch video here that they can watch, profile picture, the short notes, and here's kind of the backstory. And again, because I do a couple of different types of podcast guesting, I have a little bit more on here maybe than the average person might have. The guest tags, that's a really important feature and part of the PodMatch system because that's how they determine what shows might be a good fit for you. Down at the bottom here, they give you your social links. You can suggest titles, questions you're ready to answer. Here's highlight a couple of podcasts you've been a guest on, and then at the very bottom here, reviews. So I think this is, again, it's pretty clean. Obviously, as I said, my write-up here is a little bit longer than the average person. So I think if you're on here, you're probably going to have a shorter write-up, but it hasn't seemed to hinder me from getting booked as a guest. So now I want to show you the matches part of the platform, and this is where PodMatch really shines. And you'll see here it says 6 matches, meaning that I can only send 6 guest requests at a given time, and then they reset the clock for a number of hours. Maybe it's 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever. And part of the reason for that is so that shows don't get inundated at any given time with like a ton of requests. So it means your request is more likely to be seen versus some of these other platforms where they could just receive sort of an unlimited amount of requests at any given time. And we've seen that's one of the challenges with some of these other platforms is because there's so many requests probably coming in for some of these shows, that they don't respond to a lot of their requests. And so PodMatch is going to use the tags that I put on my profile and compare it to the tags that a show puts on their profile and then determine kind of a percent match. So let's check out the matches part of this. So it's going to do its little work calculating matches for you and then show me, here's a podcast that might be a good fit for you. You can see match strength, 62%. Tells you kind of what the podcast is about. what I like here is it gives you quite a bit of data on this. Okay, so on the platform, they don't have any reviews yet, but they got, say, 15,000 social followers, so you can see what's the potential reach of being a guest on that show. This must be maybe a newer show because it hasn't got downloads per episode data, or not, yeah, only 5 episodes published. Okay, so this is a relatively newer show, but you can see from a quick glance all of this data that's been collected. That, hey, this is a show that might be a good fit, but maybe right now, because it's a newer show, maybe it may not have the same amount of reach. But they do have, say, a 15,000 person audience, so that's pretty good there. Language, any gender, age, any sort of requirements they have for being a guest on the show. So it's really, really simple here. What are they looking for? Someone who's looking to get in shape and has questions about the right ways to do that. Here's their tags down there. So I would look at this and go, it takes me maybe 15 seconds to look at this and go, you know what? I think they have a good show here. I think I'd have a good conversation with them, but maybe later. So when I click maybe later, it says here, this member's profile will be skipped for now, but it will recirculate back into your matches, versus if I go to pass means don't show me this again. I don't think that it's a good fit. So in this case, I'll probably click maybe later. I do have the option of pinning it if I want to. I can pin it and have that on my dashboard. I can add a note here, put maybe later and save. So that show, it'll just remind me to go back and maybe check out the show again. So I'm going to click maybe later. If I wanted to match with them right now, I could just click here and message. So you can see why they say that we're like the Tinder of podcasting. So if I click maybe later, it's going to show me my next potential match. So chasing happiness, self-improvement, education. I can see that they're a premium member. Here's what the podcast is about. Here's how you can check them out. Reviews, social followers, 41,000. They don't have any downloads per episode data, although I suspect that it's not 0. It could, number of episodes published, 7. So again, a relatively new podcast that I'm being shown here. And this also could be because I've been on the platform for quite a while and, sent out over 100 and something guest requests, that I'm now, as I move through the matches, getting to some of the newer ones here. So again, you can see the guest tags here. This is what they're kind of looking for. And so ultimately you can see, again, I'm going to say, actually, I'm just going to leave this one because maybe I will actually reach out to them. But for the purposes of this video here, I'm just going to leave this as the matches section. I want to take you over to the Explore tab and show you. So you're not just limited to necessarily your matches. You can actually go to the Explore tab as well. And here's where PodMatch, again, really shines. So because I'm a podcast host, it's showing me a potential guest for my podcast. And I think it's helpful to show you this so you can see what it might look like for you. A purple check mark means that somebody's a premium member, so you're more likely to get featured up at the top if you're a premium member. An orange check mark means that they're managed by an agency, so they're clear about this. If you get a pitch from this person here, it's not this individual, it's somebody who manages them in their account. So at least you're aware up front that that's who you're communicating with. They'll show you new and noteworthy members. So they also, hey, you sign up for the platform, you're gonna be shown right up near the top, especially at the beginning, because it's pretty cool to just to get shown right away and maybe see some activity, get some invites on the platform. So if you sign up, they're going to make sure that you get that. From a host view, I can look at, here are some potential podcasts where I might want to be a guest on. They're going to, again, show some featured podcasts, new and noteworthy podcasts that might be worth it. But it's their search function and filters, which I think are really, really fantastic. So if I'm looking for a podcast that I want to be a show on, I can say, how big do I want the host's audience size to be, at least? So I can say, well, maybe I want them to have a minimum of 5,000 followers because I want them to have a decent amount of reach. What podcast media type? Okay, I'm good for video and audio. Minimum episode count. I'd like them to have, say, at least 5 episodes because I want them to be an established show. I'd like them to have at least 1 review, so someone saying, hey, we liked being on the show. And I'd like to maybe see them get, let's just say, at least 100 downloads per episode. And then host produces blog, it doesn't really matter. Podcast average rating, I'm going to say 4 stars. I'm not hard on people. I don't expect it, And then you can choose whether you want to see the newest members first or by the leaderboard. So remember, I was telling you that activity gets rewarded on this platform. And so the higher you are on the leaderboard, the more likely you are to be shown. So then I can click search here. I could have used keywords as well. It's going to show me some podcasts that it thinks might be useful for me based on the criteria that I've put up there. Now, that being said, this isn't necessarily exactly the same as the matching, where they compare compare tags. But I've been a guest on the Dylan Experience podcast already. I've been a guest on What's My Story. And so you can see I've been a guest on iHealth Radio. I've been a guest on Let's Have This Conversation, on Real Men Connect. So it's very interesting. I'm going to be a guest on Leadership Powered by Common Sense. And so just like looking through this, I'm like, oh, okay, there's actually like some pretty good matches here. I've been a guest on The Social Psychic. Anyways, you get the point. So these are shows that, because of the criteria that I set, instead of just saying I want these categories, it's like, this is more specifically what I'd like to know. I want them to have a little bit of an audience. I want them to have some episodes. I'd like to have someone review them. I'd like them to get some downloads per episode. So you could be as picky as you want. I could say, well, I want them to have an audience of at least 50,000. Now, if you're going to go for a bigger podcast like that, well, you might not be successful in your pitch, especially starting out. But you can look for that if you want. Host minimum episode count. I'd like them to say 20 episodes published, at least 5 reviews, and maybe 1,000 downloads per episode. And let's sort by the leaderboard again and see what comes up. And so you can see, again, not all these podcasts might be a perfect match for me, but I can see what podcasts meet that criteria. And maybe I want to go on that podcast, simply because they have a bigger reach. So the filters part of it is also where PodMatch really shines. And I'm just going to swing over and show you the messaging part of it. And again, I'll blur some things out for the sake of privacy, but I'll give you a little peek behind the scenes there. So over here, you can see I can switch and toggle back and forth between host view and guest view. In this case, I'm showing you the guest view, and I'm showing you just a snippet from a message where it was an inbound request where this individual requested that I come on their podcast, which is fantastic. And you can see then over here, right now it says reschedule, and we're scheduled for the 13th of April. But if I hadn't yet scheduled it, this would say schedule. So it's very easy for me to click and go to their booking link and pick a time and get scheduled on their podcast. Some of them, like this one here, has a release form that you just click, check the boxes. Yes, I release. I'm going to be on their show, and they get the rights to their show and content and so on and so forth. Where PodMatch shines is that wherever possible, they'll get an AI or a bot to do the menial tasks for you, so that when you use time on this platform, it's most efficiently used. And I think that's ultimately what it boils down to, why I spend more time on this platform than any other platform. I get a high number of inbound requests because I'm a premium member. As a host, they do revenue sharing. So that means that if I host somebody, I get a percentage of their membership fee. So PodMatch allocates 50% of their revenue to podcast hosts, which is really, really fantastic. They have a generous affiliate program, and I'm going to, of course, put my affiliate link to PodMatch in the description of this video here. So if you do sign up, I would appreciate if you use that affiliate link. So then I get a referral, and so they pay a 20% affiliate commission. And so I really also think, like Alex, I haven't met his co-founder, but Alex Sanfilippo, the founder of PodMatch, he's a very ethical entrepreneur and really loves podcasting and genuinely wants to support people and see them succeed in podcasting. He's deeply, deeply passionate about it. And because of that, because I put together all of this data, I actually had the privilege of hopping on a call with him. Again, I found him very down to earth, very accessible, very willing and open to conversations, because he genuinely wants to hear from people and create an amazing product. And he's done exactly that. And so instead of putting himself in a ivory tower somewhere far away, he makes himself very, very accessible to the public, asks for feedback, organizes events. So he's very active in terms of wanting to see this site, this platform grow and succeed. So seeing his commitment to it also encourages me to continue to be a part of this platform. And so just to wrap up, I hope that you found this really, really helpful. I hope that you do check out each one of the platforms that I've mentioned here. It's worth doing a comparison on your own as well. I've told you, I am a fan of PodMatch. It's the platform that I prefer to be on above the others for the number of reasons that I've outlined here. But I think also we should be open to trying others that might be, if for whatever reason PodMatch isn't the right fit for you, there are other options out there as well.